Nanalo ng Family Feud ng Team Pinas sa rap ng 200,000 pesos.
Family Feud, 5:40 p.m.
Welcome to my episode that is called
Nagmamano pa.
That's okay.
Today.
This is DW News, and these are our top stories. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has defended his plans to seize Gaza City. His office says he spoke with U.S. President Donald Trump about taking control of the remaining Hamas strongholds in Gaza and securing the release of hostages. Netanyahu spoke just before his country faced condemnation for its conduct in the war at an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council. A Russian airstrike on Zaporizhia in Ukraine's southeast has injured at least a dozen people and demolished several buildings. Posting on social media, Ukraine's Ministry of Foreign Affairs says Russia attacked with guided aerial bombs, hitting residential areas, a bus station, and a clinic. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says Australia will recognize a Palestinian state at the UN General Assembly in September. He says his decision is predicated on commitments from the Palestinian Authority that Hamas would have no involvement in any future state. Several Western nations have made similar announcements in recent weeks.
Palestinian people to us.
This is DW News from Berlin. You'll find much more news on our website. That's dw.com.
To evict homeless people from Washington in a bid to tackle crime in the capital, as a landmark trial over his use of the National Guard begins in LA. American chipmakers say they'll give the government 15% of some China sales, and a legal battle over Italy's plans for the world's longest single-span bridge. It's Monday, August 11th. This is Reuters World News, bringing you everything you need to know from the front lines in 10 minutes, 7 days a week. I'm Tara Oakes in Liverpool. An Israeli airstrike has killed several Al Jazeera journalists in Gaza. Among them is Anas al-Sharif. Israel alleged he headed a Hamas cell and was involved in rocket attacks. Al Jazeera has rejected the claim, calling him one of Gaza's bravest journalists. Before his death, al-Sharif had also denied he was connected to Hamas. The attack has been condemned by journalists and rights groups. Before the strike, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he expects to complete a new Gaza offensive fairly quickly. Speaking as the UN Security Council heard new demands for an end to the suffering in the Palestinian enclave. Mayan Lubel is our senior correspondent in Jerusalem.
Benjamin Netanyahu described the new plans as a final push against Hamas's last two strongholds in Gaza, mainly the area of Gaza City. We don't know exactly when it's going to happen. He said that Israel will begin by evacuating the civilian population from the area before the troops move in to tackle the last Hamas forces, he says, are in Gaza. However, there is some belief in Israel that this might be a way to bring Hamas back to the negotiating table. It leaves quite a few weeks, a window of opportunity in which perhaps will come in and perhaps negotiate the end of the war.
And what's been the reactions to the plans internationally?
These plans have caused alarm internationally and, of course, in Gaza. people going to be displaced again. There are estimates of up to 1 million people living in the area that Israel wants to now go into again, not for the first time. It's really been not well received. We saw yesterday Netanyahu called a press conference with foreign journalists to try and explain Israel's position. He hadn't done so for almost a year now. It very much reminds us of what Israel was doing before it went into Rafah in southern Gaza. Before it went in, it described that as well as Hamas's last strongholds. So very, very similar to what we saw last year in May.
And Australia has become the latest country to say it will recognise a Palestinian state at next month's UN General Assembly.
A two-state solution is humanity's best hope to break the cycle of violence in the Middle East and to bring an end to the conflict, suffering and starvation in Gaza.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is saying recognition would depend on commitments received from the Palestinian Authority, including that Hamas would have no involvement in any future state. President Donald Trump has pledged to evict homeless people from Washington, D.C. as part of a clampdown on crime there, calling the capital one of the most dangerous cities anywhere in the world in a post on Truth Social. The city's police department says violent crime was down in D.C. in the first 7 months of the year compared with last year. The Democratic mayor of Washington, Muriel Bowser, says the capital is not experiencing a crime spike. More details on Trump's plan are expected in a press conference today. The focus of a landmark trial starting in San Francisco. It'll examine the administration's decision to send troops to Los Angeles in June. The government faces accusations of violating a 19th century law that prevents the military from enforcing civilian laws. Most of the troops have now left, but a trial could test legal standards for using federal troops on US soil. Our legal reporter Jack Queen has more details.
It's asking a broader question about the president's authority to use troops in domestic contexts. And so, for instance, President Trump has said that he's interested in deploying troops to Washington, D.C. because he says that the city is unsafe, and he's indicated that he wants to use troops for conventional policing purposes. Now, this is something that's prohibited under the law, or at least that's the interpretation of California and other states who don't want the National Guard coming in. But the Trump administration is really pushing the envelope on that and testing how far they can go in potentially using troops to do routine policing actions, which historically has never really been done in the U.S., with a few exceptions. For instance, I'm thinking of the Civil Rights era, when the federal government sent in the National Guard to help enforce school integration. But the difference here is that what Trump has been trying to do, or at least his critics are claiming he's trying to do, is use troops to do things like make arrests and execute search warrants, the types of things that are normally left to police.
So what's so notable about this case?
This trial asks some very fundamental and sweeping questions about the president's authority to use the military on U.S. soil against U.S. citizens. And a lot of these questions have never really been tested in court this way because it's so rare for presidents to use troops this way. And so the judge has an opportunity here to really lay down a clear line on what the president is and isn't allowed to do.
Will infiltrate the works, so the infrastructure minister, Matteo Salvini, said they will put in place a huge control structure to prevent any infiltration from mafia groups in the project. But obviously these mafia groups are really powerful. Salvini said, if we block all infrastructural projects in southern Italy because there is a risk of mafia infiltration, then we are not probably going to be able to develop any infrastructure project in the south because mafia infiltration is always possible.
And for today's recommended read, Vietnamese farmers are facing eviction for Trump's family-backed golf resort. The luxury golf course will force thousands off their land, and some are saying that the compensation package isn't enough. For more on that or on any of the stories from today, visit Reuters.com or the Reuters app. Don't forget to follow us on your favourite podcast player, and if you're listening on a smart speaker, just ask for the latest news from Reuters, 7 days a week. We'll be back tomorrow with our daily headline show.
That's it for your news updates. To see more stories, open Google News.